Hey Tires, welcome back to another fly tying tutorial. Today we're going to be tackling Phil Rowley's Chromie. This is a Chironomid pattern tied with the silver and the red. So the red, that represents traces of hemoglobin that stem from the larval stage, and those usually collect in segments throughout the body. The silver represents the trapped gases that the chironomids use to help push themselves up through the water column and get into position for emergence. So this is a really simple pattern. There's a few versions that Phil ties. He ties the silver, which I guess would be the original. He also does a gunmetal, which is a bit of a black nickel type color, and he also does a black Sally, with the Sally referring to Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails, which is used on the pattern, as we'll see. All right, let's get to it. Let's get a fresh hook in the vise. I'm using a Mustad C49S hook here. This one's a size 10. And when I put this in the jaw, I just tend to angle it just a little bit down, just so I can get access to the back of this. So we'll push our bead back. I'm using a I think it's a 3/16 or 3.2 millimeter black nickel bead. So I'm using my Flymaster 6/0 in dark olive. Color doesn't really matter. This is going to be almost completely covered up. We'll just start at the eye, making sure that you've pushed your bead back out of the way. So we're going to tie on a little bit of gill first. So the first material, I'm using the Stillwater Midge Gill. If you don't have this, you can use something like a white EP fiber or calf tail. You can also use ostrich Herl, works good. So I've just take apart the different strands here. I think there's about 4 strands in each. And then I'm going to double it up. So I guess you can split it into 2s if you like. But this is my preference, to double it over. So you don't need a lot at the front. You just want to basically cover the hook eye. I'm just going to do a couple wraps. You don't want to build up your thread too much, so just a couple wraps. Then we'll trim off. And then we're just going to add a whip finish on this. And I usually add just a touch of cement or glue, just to kind of help secure that. You just want to make sure that you don't have it so tight in there that you can't get your tippet through. Yeah, so we're just going to trim that out a little bit. And now we're going to tie our thread on again behind the bead, and we're going to start constructing the body. So first, we're going to take a piece of red Flashabou, just a single piece. You can also use a holographic mylar if you have it. I do have some, but I don't have any that's quite thin enough for this size of pattern, so we're going to be using just Flashabou, just a single strand. So I'm going to tie that down the length of the hook. and come back. Right, next I'm going to take a couple strands. I think I've got about 5 strands of silver flashabou. If you're tying one of the other versions, you can tie it with the gunmetal black or straight black flashabou works well. Some of the other colors, you can use different olives or browns, maroons for different types of chironomids. Really helps if you get out into the lake that you're fishing and take some samples out of the water just to have a look, compare the size and the color of the chironomids that the fish are feeding on. So I've just tied that in, and I've tied it all the way down to where the red is and then back up. So here Phil usually adds a coat of super glue. Don't actually have super glue, I'm just using Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails. So this won't be quite as durable, it won't bond quite as well, but it should make this a fairly decent fly. So I'm just going to start wrapping, trying to keep it flat and even. You want to make sure you have no gaps in the body. And then we'll just tie that off right behind the bead. Couple wraps in front, couple in behind, just to make sure it's secure. We'll trim off the excess here. Save that for your next one. When I'm doing this, I usually just take a pair of hackle pliers just to kind of make sure that stuff doesn't get thrown around my tying desk. So next we're going to take our red. This is a little bit tricky here. You just want to make sure you get a couple wraps at the tag. And then we're just going to spiral this up in open loops. And the closer your loops, the more red will show up into this pattern. Alright, that looks pretty decent, so we'll tie this off behind the bead, wrap in front and behind just to make sure it's locked in place. So you can add another coat, just a light coat of Hard as Nails. Want to make sure you get the underside in there as well. And then lastly, we're going to add a little bit of Peacock Herl. I usually take 1 to 2 strands depending on the size. So for bigger sizes like this, in the 8 to 12 range, I'll use 2 Herls depending on how fluffy they are. And on smaller ones, I'll just use a single. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to cut the tips off those. And we'll tie those in together. You just want to come back a couple millimeters, then rest your head behind the bead. And we're going to wrap those 2 Herls together. Just wind that forward. This here is your thorax. Again, we just want to lock that material in place. A couple wraps behind and in front. We'll add whip finish, make sure you seat that. And we'll add another one for some extra durability. And we'll give this fly a couple hours to completely set up before we fish it. There you go, Phil Rowley's Chromie.